Elvis Presley's deepest trust at Graceland wasn't placed in his family, closest friends, bodyguards, or bandmates. It was given to his maid, Nancy Rooks. For more than 10 years, she quietly stood by his side, preparing his meals, folding his clothes, and, most importantly, becoming the keeper of a secret he shared with no one else. One day, in a moment of raw honesty, he looked her in the eye and told her something deeply personal. He made her swear to never repeat it. This was a truth Elvis confided only to Nancy, during a private moment when no one else was around. The secret was so intimate and shocking that he asked her to keep it hidden forever. But now, decades later, Nancy has finally broken her silence. What she revealed has left even the most devoted Elvis fans stunned. Why did she choose to speak now? Because the truth she carried is nothing short of groundbreaking. Before her passing, Nancy revealed the secret Elvis once begged her to keep. Of all the people in his life, she was the only one he trusted with this truth, not a guard, not a band member, not even family. Nancy wasn't a celebrity, and she didn't live in luxury. She was simply his maid. Nancy Rooks spent over a decade working quietly behind the scenes at Graceland. To the outside world, she was just the cook, the one who did the laundry and cleaned the rooms. But to Elvis, she was so much more. She was the quiet presence who witnessed the man behind the legend. She saw him without the spotlight, when the fans were gone, when the laughter faded, and when the burden of fame grew too heavy. In a rare moment of vulnerability, Elvis confided in Nancy, sharing a secret he asked her to never tell. And she didn't. For decades, she protected that confidence. She never sought fame or attention, never used her connection to Elvis for gain. Even as books were published, rumors spread, and documentaries speculated, Nancy stayed silent. But in her final days, that silence began to fade, and what she revealed changed everything fans thought they knew. This wasn't just tabloid material. It was personal, painful, and deeply human. Now, the truth she guarded for so long is reshaping how the world views the final chapter of one of the most iconic artists of the 20th century. Graceland, for many, was a glamorous estate filled with music and charm. But for Nancy, who started working there in 1967 as a maid and cook, it quickly became clear that she hadn't just stepped into a mansion, she had walked into the heart of a storm. The house was elegant, yes, with chandeliers, velvet curtains, and gold accents, but underneath the shine was a house that seemed to breathe with unpredictability. Some days, Graceland was alive with music, laughter, and late-night conversations. Other times, it was eerily quiet, as if the very walls were holding their breath. Nancy saw the private Elvis, wandering the kitchen barefoot, hair tousled, sipping coffee, asking about bacon. He was always kind, always gentle, until he wasn't. He could be boyish and charming, then moody and withdrawn. At times, he would pace the hallways in the early hours, lost in thought. Other nights, he would spontaneously break into a gospel song, his voice echoing through the rooms. The rhythms of the house didn't follow the clock, they followed Elvis. And Nancy adapted without question. To the world, he was the king of rock and roll. But to Nancy, he was simply Mr. Elvis, a brilliant, complex man with a fragile heart. She had no idea how far she'd be drawn into his private world. Her role extended far beyond chores. She was there for the late-night snacks, the impromptu get-togethers, and the emotional lows that no one else witnessed. When Elvis was restless, hungry, or needed someone who wouldn't ask questions, Nancy was there. She even helped him dress, sometimes while he was still in yesterday's clothes. With care, she laid out his scarves and rings, knowing every detail mattered. She always remembered which watch matched each jumpsuit. She arranged the pool area just the way he liked it, kept his favorite snacks within easy reach, and knew exactly how he preferred his sweet potato pie, hot, soft, and homemade. Even if it was the middle of the night, she made sure it was done right. Elvis was particular about cleanliness, often showering multiple times a day, sometimes even more than once in an hour. Despite his obsession with privacy, he allowed Nancy into his most intimate spaces, the bathroom, the bedroom, the mess behind the scenes. In the chaos that surrounded him, she became a constant. While fame, noise, and pressure spun around him non-stop, Nancy never intruded. She didn't question or criticize. She observed, listened, and remained devoted. Over time, she wasn't just an employee anymore. She became the one person entrusted with his most personal and guarded secret. The morning everything changed, August 16, 1977, began like many others at Graceland, odd, sleepless, and unpredictable. Elvis had stayed up all night playing racquetball with Ginger Alden and his cousin Billy. Just before dawn, he returned home looking pale and drained. Nancy was already in the kitchen, getting ready for another long day. No food, he told her. Just some water. She didn't give it much thought and sent Pauline, another maid, upstairs with a jug, the same kind they used for orange juice. But Pauline noticed something unusual. "I've never seen him drink like that," she later said. So fast. So desperate. Nancy didn't dwell on it. She figured maybe he was just tired or dehydrated from the game. Then, a noise broke the stillness. A soft thud. It wasn't loud or violent, just off. Nancy froze and listened. Nothing followed. She convinced herself it was nothing and returned to her tasks. But what would unfold in the next few hours would remain etched in her memory forever. At exactly 1:50 p.m., the quiet at Graceland was shattered by the crackle of the intercom. A note of urgency rang through the house, and Nancy Rooks knew immediately that something was wrong. A chill ran through her as dread settled over her. Without stopping to think, she dropped everything and rushed to the stairs. The hallway felt strangely long, stretched by anxiety and uncertainty. The air felt heavier with each step. The silence was overwhelming. Her footsteps seemed louder as she neared the bathroom. That's when she saw him, Elvis, lying face down on the floor, completely still. He wasn't moving. He wasn't breathing. There was no sign of life. The sight hit her hard, but she didn't scream or panic. Her instincts took control. She turned and hurried to find help. By the time medics arrived, there was nothing left to do. Still, Nancy didn't stop. She moved with calm, guiding the paramedics through the maze of Graceland's halls, up the narrow stairs, through the tight spaces of a home that now felt frozen in sorrow. Her hands stayed steady, her voice composed, but her mind was spinning. And beneath it all, one haunting question began to rise, a question she would carry for the rest of her life. What exactly had she just witnessed? For Nancy, the answers never brought peace. In the years after Elvis's death, quiet suspicions began to surface, not only in her thoughts but among those who were there. Rumors began circulating about missing prescription bottles, inconsistent timelines, and odd details surrounding the hours before Elvis collapsed. Though she wasn't one to seek the spotlight, Nancy eventually shared something that changed the narrative. Before the paramedics got there, someone, she never said who, asked her to tidy the bathroom. Just a bit. Nothing big. Just make things look neat. So she did. She wiped the counter, moved a towel, and straightened a few items. It was second nature, routine. At the time, it didn't seem like a big deal. But as more questions emerged, about altered scenes and missing pills, she began to wonder. Had she unknowingly removed a clue? "I didn't know what I was covering up," she reportedly said. "I just did what I was told." It wasn't a confession, but it was a moment of painful realization. And that moment never left her. Just like the rooms at Graceland, sealed after Elvis's death, some truths were never fully opened again. What was once a private retreat became a public tribute. Fans traveled from all over the world, waiting in long lines under the hot sun just for a glimpse of the life he once lived. Tour guides led them past velvet ropes and restricted rooms. Gift shops opened, walls were covered with posters and souvenirs. His voice echoed from speakers. His face was everywhere. Yet, not every space was accessible. The upper floor remained closed off, his bedroom, his bathroom, the very spot where his life came to an end. That area stayed sealed, sacred, untouched by cameras or included on tourist maps. Only a handful of people were ever permitted upstairs. Nancy Rooks was among them. Each time she climbed those steps to dust or fold laundry, the memories would hit her, sharp and clear. The silence. The sudden thud. The image of him lying face down on the cold floor. She wasn't just tidying up a room, she was reliving a moment in time. She moved through that part of the house not as a cleaner, but as someone who had stood still while history shifted around her. She carried that truth quietly, held deep in her memory. But with time, that truth began to rise. Some stories don't stay hidden forever. Eventually, they demand to be told. In the last year of her life, something changed in Nancy. She started opening up, not to reporters or in interviews, but in conversations with close friends and former coworkers. People who knew her not just as Elvis's housekeeper, but as a woman who had quietly witnessed more than she ever revealed. She never sought the spotlight. She didn't give emotional interviews or chase fame. Selling secrets to the media wasn't in her nature. Her words were shared quietly, in search of peace rather than attention. Still, those words held power. She revealed that Elvis had been suffering much more than anyone on the outside realized. He wasn't just tired, he was deeply worn down. She had seen him taking medications, not all of them prescribed. Pills came and went, brought by different people, swapped or forgotten amidst the chaos. She remembered moments when he'd fall asleep mid-sentence, during meals, in the middle of short conversations. It wasn't just physical fatigue, it went deeper. It was emotional. Spiritual. As if he were slowly surrendering to an invisible weight no one else could feel. Then she said something that struck hard. Elvis didn't just die, he faded. And no one around him stopped it. A quiet truth with serious implications. Nancy shared one more memory, something she had never written or made public before. In the frenzied moments after Elvis was found unresponsive, someone asked her to tidy up the space, just enough to make things look less messy before emergency help arrived. She acted on instinct. She wiped down surfaces, folded a towel, picked up a few scattered items. It was second nature to her, her job. She wasn't thinking about the consequences, only about restoring order, doing what was asked. But later, when the press flooded Graceland, when stories started to conflict and timelines became unclear, she began to wonder, had she erased something vital? Had her well-meaning actions unintentionally covered up the truth? She didn't do it to hide anything or deceive anyone, it was out of loyalty. That thought stayed with her. It lingered quietly but weighed heavily. Because even small acts can lead to lasting regret. When Nancy's final words began to spread, reactions came quickly, and they were mixed. Some fans didn't believe her. Others felt betrayed. Many appreciated her honesty and courage. Online communities buzzed with debate. Biographers revisited events. New questions were raised. Was the truth always within reach? Had her moment of tidying up changed how history was recorded? And who else had known? The Presley estate remained silent. But among those who had once worked at Graceland, those who had also kept quiet for years, something shifted. Her truth had broken through. Nancy Rooks never wanted recognition. She loved Elvis not as a famous icon, but as a man who once asked her to mend his pants while joking around. She honored his memory. She protected his privacy.